The brief of our preliminary task was to create a short film of continuity editing involving 3 lines of dialogue and opening a door. We also had to plot a short conversation and comply with the 180 degrees rule. This individual criteria is something we had to bear in mind when experimenting with different camera angles and different techniques.
The brief of the task was to create an opening of a horror film. In order to do this, we had to plan thoroughly and use our preliminary and Wilderness Woods video to take inspiration from, and use what went wrong to make our horror film look professional and cinematic. We planned to create continuity throughout in spite of the montage. We left it in chronological order in this section. Traditionally, montages aren't examples of continuity editing, and the jumpy cuts with filters and camera movement does not necessarily take away from the continuity of the cut. The storyline that the antagonist is preparing remains throughout. We experimented with a range of camera angles and movement in the final product as we needed to try and improve our filmmaking as a whole. We only used 1 day of filming for a whole product and got a lot more footage than necessary. This was helpful as it means we did not have to, that we could have adapted our opening in several different ways. We also used a similar opening the door shot in the preliminary and the real thing. However, it was done with a light switch, with the hand moving towards the camera, coming from out of focus in the background to focused in the foreground.
Due to the amount of time we had to actually film the preliminary, there were considerable restrictions. We could not modify costumes as we did in the real thing to connote a certain genre or representation, such as the black costume for the antagonist, which connoted an opaque identity and degree of mystery. We adapted what we could with the costumes, however, as we used mine and Frankie's rings, which I wore to connote a persona of a stereotypically irreverent, hard man. Also, another restriction was that we had to film somewhere within the school, which meant trying to find a suitable location within the premises. This was difficult because all the time we were trying to find the best location, so were the other groups.
In terms of finding an appropriate location to shoot in, we had lots of difficulties. The pillbox in Poundsbridge was a possible location, however the light would not be sufficient, and due to the time of the year, natural light would not have been sufficient. We were able to construct a strong negative representation of people with mental illnesses with props and costume, for example the gloves, all back clothing, and the sledgehammer, connoting the fact that he is unstable. The planning took up considerable time as we had to create a plot, along with everything in terms of mise-en-scène, along with factors we couldn't change, such as weather. This involves everything from body language to the weather. The single day we filmed, it was raining and very windy. However, this suited our narrative, as pathetic fallacy symbolised that something bad was about to happen or already had. There was no dialogue throughout, so we didn't have to write a script.
Although there were significant restrictions, we were also given lots of freedom with our chosen genre, to which ours was a gangster scene with a red herring. We used props, such as a combination of our rings to connote a rebellious genre of American gangster, just except this one was anti-stereotypically tall and white. In the time that we had, it was difficult to think of a creative response, and it actually probably took us more time planning the story than it did to film it. However, we used long shots to allow the audience to establish a location, a feature which we distinctively eliminated in the actual shooting of our horror movie. Another camera shot we used, which we didn't use in the real thing, was a tracking shot, as it didn't really fit into our montage style of the preparation scene of our opening.
Our narrative started with a flash forward to the forthcoming events with Louisa unconscious on the floor. The title scene then shows along with the preparation montage with titles also composited on. In the final shot, the antagonist is walking up the stairs with the music box playing, fading to a black screen. This will keep the audience hooked and want to watch the rest of the film.
Although the amount of time for our preliminary task was very much restricted, previous filming experience at locations such as Wilderness Woods came in very handy, as we already knew and had used a range of long shots which we knew worked and looked good. This is represented as some of the shots we used in the Wilderness Wood task as well as the preliminary.
One of our major problems was overcoming difficulties whilst editing. This involved such things as finding the correct shots to use and finding suitable sounds, because we had to overlay a range of shots and sounds during the cut.
Our narrative relied on the fact that the audience would interpret the character as a gangster sort of figure, as he is shown as a rebellious and irreverent nature, doing things a normal, peaceful person wouldn't do, such as kicking over a stationary chair. Then, we also used a red herring as the gangster unconventionally simply asked about the homework task, showing a change in persona.
Our final piece, I'm proud of our final piece, however some of our shots were too long throughout the montage and it was unclear what happened to the girl, so in future we'll try and anchor the fact that the girl was not actually dead and simply unconscious. And